What? Great. All right. Well, welcome back to Peace Week and Hubcast Studios. And it's amazing to be here with our artist, our artistic director, the one and only Mr. Gary Malkin. Gary, good to see you.
Man, it's tremendous being here. And it makes such a difference. I mean, what we've developed together on Zoom and globally is extraordinary. But when you can actually be together, 3D is nothing like it.
Oh, I know. It's absolutely amazing. And it was incredible. We put on a concert here in the studio last night. It was a lot of fun. And, that's how people can see that on the Peace Week archives. But it's so true. Being together physically, particularly after those years, it was really 3 years, without being able to have those physical interactions. And it's something we've talked a little bit about, that things like Peace Week, this pilgrimage, we're going to see more and more of communities coming together in place. We've got friends at the moment that have gathered in Stonehenge. There's a gathering down at the pyramid in Ecuador. I know Lawrence Singer from Unity Earth has made the pilgrimage down to Ecuador. We're all gathered in Hubcast here in Vancouver, and we see more and more of this taking place, Gary, in the future, of people coming together locally and being in physical proximity for community events around major gatherings like Peace Week, and then being connected through the technology to the whole world.
And there was something about when that first night we all gathered together around the fire, to have a fire pit, to actually reclaim this primordial experience of being around a fire together. It was so powerful to really reclaim that, that ancient practice.
Oh my, there's just nothing. There is nothing like it. Right, so we're learning how to be the best of both worlds, because one thing I think we learned through the whole 2020 to 2022 was that there are things we can do virtually that we couldn't have done with the physical limitations.
Exactly.
And, but then we missed what those gifts of being around a fire together, which is irreplaceable. So now we're thinking about, well, how do we connect them all together and how do we bring them together? And we're seeing it unfold this Peace Week as people come together in place. There's a whole pilgrimage, by the way, going down to Split Rock, the sacred land of Chief Dwayne Perry and the Ramapo Lenape down there for Saturday's incredible blessings. And again, we see gathering in place, spirit of place, community coming together, but then connected to the global fire.
And this is really analogous. The sacred marriage of the divine feminine and masculine, the sacred marriage of the biofield and the global internet. The sacred marriages of these seeming opposites as one thing, different expressions of one thing. The sacred marriage of what Miranda is about to talk about. The embodiment of transmission in words through the power of music. St. Augustine said, prayers sung are prayers with wings. So the actual nexus between inner peace and outer peace is another sacred marriage, right? So it's all about these unifying and ending the separation of these as separate dualities and as one thing. And that's, music has a great way of doing that, and that's a good segue into Miranda. But
that is a good segue into Miranda, Gary. As we reach for the best of all worlds and connecting, the spirit of local to the global, the whole, and how we get better at doing that. And we're really excited to be bringing Miranda in a minute. And just as we do, and I'll give her a formal introduction in a moment. But Gary, this is someone who's touched your life very, very deeply.
Oh my God.
Someone who really has been a huge influence on your journey. So tell us, for people who may or may not know, about Miranda McPherson from your heart.
Ooh, got the goosebumps just thinking about it. Miranda McPherson is one of those people who, in the tradition of Ramana Maharshi, really stands for the relaxation of the ego. Be nothing, do nothing, strive for nothing, fix nothing. There's no problem, right? And it sounds so deceptively simple, but when I was I've been studying with her for 13 years now, and we're beloved friends as well. And the album we're about to that will go with her courses, that she does these mantra courses coming up on the 30th, where she'll be talking about the power of mantra and how they're embedded with the music. But that when I was in an experience with her in a retreat, there was something that literally started to melt. And this shining power of the essence of life itself comes through all these compensatory ego strategies that think that we have a problem to fix, that think that we are problems to fix. And when you really let go and shed all of that unnecessary baggage that actually thinks that there's something wrong with you, or something wrong, right? And then what emerges is this shining capacity to suddenly realize, whoa, what's happening? And it's called what's not happening. It's so beautiful because what happens is the luminous quality of life itself, of the unitive principle that lives inside of every one of us. And so when we did this album together, I mean, that's what she's been the most rigorous teacher I ever had, because there's this way of looking at the shenanigans of the compensatory strategy of what our beloved late friend, who is a very powerful student of Miranda's, Neil Rogan, used to say, this is our prisonality, escaping the solitary confinement of our prisonality, right? Our made-up self that believes that it has that the me that we claim is actually separate than God, right? And so being with Miranda's Sangha, as mirandamcpherson.com, has been such a powerful fire of self-evaluation as you start to relax the ego's hold on this separate idea of itself. And so when we did this album together, she invited me to co-produce and arrange this album called Streams of Grace, Music and Mantra Medicine for Yoga and Inner Peace. And as an old bhakti that used to like follow Ramdas around when I was 18 years old as a hippie around the Oberlin College circuit, all around.
Can't imagine.
Oh my God. I sort of reclaimed my bhakti with this production of this album. And I realized I am a card-carrying bhakti. I mean, I tried to hide it, but it's like so beautiful. So this album, creating it, was we meditated a lot on how can we let go of all the egoic ways that music production can kind of say, some pieces of music will say, listen to me. The music will say, as if it were alive, it'll say, listen to me. We kept on saying, how can we make music that would say, listen to you, right? Listen to you. And that's what we did. And that album has really been really transmissive focused. So it's going to go live soon. And it'll be coming with all her programs that are coming up soon. So
yeah. Wonderful, Gary. And that's amazing. That's going to be coming towards the end of September. Which is exciting. It sounds like something definitely to keep an eye out for. So let's get into hearing Miranda herself speaking, and this transmission. There's nothing to fix. I love that. I love that. There's nothing to fix. So Miranda McPherson is an interfaith minister, spiritual teacher, and author who shares a feminine approach to surrender and non-dual realization based on the practice she calls ego relaxation. Her wisdom and palpable transmission invite others to become more graceful human beings through inquiry, meditation, devotion, and psychological integration. Grounded in extensive study of the world's wisdom tradition and inspired by Sri Ramana Maharshi, A Course in Miracles, and the Diamond Approach, Miranda sounds amazing. What a combination.
Right.
Miranda has been guiding others into direct experience of the sacred for 30 years. In her 20s, she founded the One Spirit Interfaith Foundation in London, where she trained and ordained over 600 ministers and counselors. Wow. Today, Miranda leads the Living Grace Global Sangha and the Living Grace Sonoma Sangha in Northern California. She's originally an Aussie, right? She's originally from Australia.
Yes,
We'll claim her. We'll claim her in Australia. Absolutely. And she lives in Northern California, leads retreats internationally, serves as core faculty of the Shift Network, and member of the Association for Spiritual Integrity. Miranda's books include The Way of Grace,
which I need to say is a classic. It's a spiritual classic.
Beautiful. Well, coming from you, Gary, that's a high recommendation. It's the subtitle of The Way of Grace is The Transforming Power of Ego Relaxation, which is on Sounds True, Boundless Love, which is on Rider, published by Rider, and Meditation on Boundless Love, also Sounds True. Miranda is also a kirtan musician with a mantra album, The Heart of Being, unapologetically feminine, joyful, and down-to-earth in her way of being. Miranda is dedicated to loving people all the way back into the freedom and wholeness of our true nature.
And she's the real deal. Yeah.
Well, thank
Miranda,
you, Gary.
Thank you for your great work, dear.
Thank you, Gary. It's been a joy and a pleasure to have this little moment of sharing. And now we get the joys continue. Let's hear from Miranda McPherson.
Enjoy.
So the main emphasis at this point on the whole movement would be as a sociological.
A peaceful and thriving world where humanity lives in right relationship with ourselves, with other human beings, with other living beings, with the natural world. Wow. That sounds so beautiful and wonderful. I read the Peace Week objectives and my heart says yes. Clearly yours does too. But it's one thing to sign up for a beautiful vision, and it's a whole other thing to really live into that vision in our way of being impeccably in each moment of our life. Every morning at the end of my meditation, or even sometimes as I'm just lying in bed about to get up, I say a prayer, and it's always some version of this. Bring me into my deepest center and help me be a blessing to everyone I meet, interact with in any way, shape, or form today. And I really mean it. But that prayer, that good intention, is kind of meaningless if I don't also do a little review at the end of the day and ask myself, how'd we go? What happened? And that I'm willing to look honestly and compassionately at where I was able to embody my prayer and where I wasn't, and to be able to look at that with honesty and compassion. So really the question is, what do we all need to close that gap between our highest intentions and what's actually going on in our embodiment, that we may be peace? In my almost 4 decades on my own spiritual path, that's been a pretty eclectic path, and now 30 years or more of accompanying many other people from all walks of life to their spiritual path and going deeper and further, I've really seen the truth of Rumi's words when he said, "Give up to grace. You need a lot more help than you know, but the ocean takes care of each wave until it reaches the shore." So grace is really my favorite subject, and everything that I share with people is really about that in some way. So I want to define grace as direct experience of divine presence. There's so many ways we can experience that, but really it is the sacred, the truth, coming alive from within us in a way that not only blesses and uplifts us, but transforms us and heals us and helps us to become graceful. So it helps when we start by just reflecting on our own experience of that which has known us and loved us all the days of our life, when we pay attention to the felt experience of that, when we pay attention to the fact that we didn't birth ourselves, that you're so much more than your thoughts and your emotions and the roles you play, that you and I and everyone exist within and as part of an intelligence that no religion or thought system could really ultimately lay claim to or point to them, though. But we're really talking about the reality of what we are, that brings forth our noble qualities, that helps us to embody our highest potential in this world and be a blessing. So how can we gain more access to this, really? All the great mystical traditions remind us that grace comes alive through some form of surrender. But the rub is that our ego can't do surrender. It's more something we learn to allow as we relax our misunderstandings. And we relax, most of all, our tendency to try to control life and learn to be here and relax our defenses so that we can be found by a grace deeper than our mind. So there's nothing that I know that helps this to happen more than devotional practice, engaging the love of our deep heart through turning into a mantra. It's a form of practice that many mystical traditions have included, and for very good reason. It helps us wherever we find ourselves on the spiritual path, whether predominantly we experience walking a path that is really essentially about a path to the divine. We're in what the Hasidic mystic Martin Buber articulated as an I-thou paradigm. We're relating to ourself as a separate entity, and we're seeking real contact with a deeper reality, whether we call that God or by any other name, that's beautiful and valid. Or whether we experience having gone deeper in that I-thou relationship, where we find ourselves in a kind of divine partnership, where we are awake to the fact that we are in relationship with a source, a higher power, and we're seeking to live in alignment and partnership with that. And mantra and devotion is relevant even as our experience becomes more non-dual, where the sense of someone being in alignment with a something has broken down, and we experience ourselves as part of the unity of being genuinely. Mantra, what is that? It's a Sanskrit word, really, and it comes from two root syllables. Man meaning referring to the mind, and tra means protect. That tells us a lot, that mantra actually protects us when we turn into it. Mahatma Gandhi was a big advocate of mantra, was a very big part of his practice, and he said, the mantra becomes one's staff of life and carries you through every ordeal. And wouldn't he know? So mantra is really a specific grouping of sound, syllables, and vibrations that when we turn into it, either silently or we sense the pulsation, we listen, or we meditate on the mantra, we chant it, we visualize it perhaps, it draws us into a living stream of grace that is a transmission of higher consciousness. And that offers us something very profound. It offers us a pillow, literally like a place we can rest our weary head with all our stories and interpersonal issues and our worries and insecurities and stresses. It gives us just like we lay our head into a pillow at night so we can relax and let go into restorative sleep. So a mantra can give you something to lean your worrying mind into. Lean your mind into the sounds and syllables. One of the things that does that's so practical for all of us is it gives us a very tangible way to calm the body-mind, to calm the nervous system by collecting what Patanjali called one-pointed concentration. This is foundational for any spiritual deepening in all systems of meditation. Ask us firstly to concentrate and collect our attention. So mantra is a very, very simple way to let that happen, even when you're really stressed or worried. Mantra also activates our deep heart and its natural devotion, the love within us that is not just sweet and fulfilling, but has the power to melt our ego distortions. That's what love's presence does. It melts ego very effectively. So as we activate our devotion through the mantra, it brings that love that's deep there in us, that is both sweet and good, but also potent and powerful, brings that love forward and helps us to feel how much we actually love the truth, God, reality. That makes us more real in our lives. And in the process, it starts purifying us of our inner conflicts. The sounds and the syllables are very specific, and they act like a broom, a vibrational broom through you, sweeping our consciousness with a grace that brings alive a deeper reality than our ego. And that's a powerful cleansing force. And in the process of mantra, we'll start to awaken our essential qualities, which essential qualities are usually specific to which mantra we're working on. And it calls them to the foreground to help us embody our noble intentions in our life. Whatever other practices you do, maybe you work with yoga or formal meditation or prayers, mantra will infuse and empower any other practices you do with a greater spiritual potency. I'm often saying to my students, if you find yourself resisting getting to the meditation cushion in the morning, try working with a mantra first and notice how it brings you alive and inspires you to want to come sit and drop. This is also true with any other practice, so I encourage you to work with it like that and notice what happens. So mantra offers us a powerful way in everyday life to change the channel from just letting our unwholesome mental patterns run to shifting our consciousness back to loving awareness. I mean, there are some days where despite our best intentions, we all feel stressed or overwhelmed, or we get triggered with our partner or our kid or our colleague. And, or whatever the latest difficulty, that the suffering of the daily news that pours down the pipe. None of us are immune to this, especially these days. Back in 2020, when so many parts of the world were in the first phase of the lockdowns due to the pandemic, I found myself taking in more news than I usually would, mostly because I was just trying to find out what was going on, not just here, but in different parts of the world. And I'm sure you probably were too. At first, when this all started to happen, I felt a strange sense of hope, even though my heart was breaking for the suffering of so many and the fear that everyone was feeling. But nevertheless, I felt a hope that maybe this could be the trigger. This could be a powerful way for us, not just personally, but collectively as groups of people, as a society, to rise to a new level of altruism and compassionate cooperation with one another on a much greater scale. And as time wore on and the intensity of the upcoming election that year grew louder each day, and the death tolls kept skyrocketing, and so many more people were suffering, and this whole thing started to get so politicized, I just started to feel this deep sadness at how this thing that could have so galvanized our best seemed to just increase the polarization, and how so many people, even in my close circle of friends and loved ones, were having difficulty to have calm and open conversations about different perspectives. I noticed that so many people were just getting caught up in their wiggy bits, what I call lovingly, and certainly existential challenges to our well-being do trigger our survival instinct and our fears for sure. And so I noticed for some people there was evolution going on, but often I also saw a lot of devolution. And this made my heart feel so sad, not to mention noticing more and more homeless people in the neighborhoods and town where I live. That just breaks my heart when I see people not having the basics that all human beings deserve. So when I was starting to really feel heavy-hearted about this and frustrated at our collective kind of failure, really, to rise to the challenge, I decided I was going to take myself downstairs and just go and chant. And so I would do that quite often. And I came downstairs and I'd put my hands on the keyboard of my harmonium. And I would just let whatever mantra came to me start being sung. And I noticed an interesting thing, how mantras that I hadn't really been visiting for even 20 years started singing me. And I would go with that, and I would start noticing the impact of that mantra on my quality of being. I started to feel the specific kinds of grace that I needed to return to the clearest vessel I could be, dancing with the sound and the syllables. And it was just wonderful to re-experience what a profound game changer these mantras were. Within about 10 or 15 minutes, I'd been in a very different place. It brought me back to my strength, my peace, my joy, independent of what's going on. And it helped me to actually continue to show up for others and serve them in their time of need. So I was speaking to Gary Malkin about this one day, and how it was really clear that it was time to just get into the studio and really record these mantras and let more people have access to the grace that pour through them. And he very kindly got very excited and said, please let me produce this for you. It was such a beautiful offering, and I couldn't say no. And we had an amazing time in the year 2021 and 2022 recording these mantras together. The whole project was blessed. And as friends of mine and loved ones of mine started getting COVID, and I did too, and I noticed a phenomena with the COVID virus in terms of how it affects our consciousness and how it seemed to not only make you very physically sick, but it tend to have a very, very nasty impact on one's psyche, taking a person down into what I call bad neighborhoods of the mind at a time where you don't have the strength to turn the car around, which is what one needs to do. And when I say bad neighborhoods of the mind, I mean the virus tended to press on any undigested hurts, any pain, any fear, and blow it right up out of proportion at a time when there's just no strength to work with that with any objectivity. So when loved ones of mine got sick with COVID, I took to taking the moment to just pray for them and listen in for what mantra do I feel would really be good for them. And I would send it to them with a simple instruction, just press play and let this wash over you and help you to rest and heal. Well, every person that I did that for reported back to me that this was a more potent medicine for them than any physical medicine or pretty much anything else. It got them through some tricky moments and brought back the love they needed, the compassion they needed, the strength, the peace they needed. We all know from our own experience that music's powerful, that it can inspire and uplift us or soothe us depending on what we choose. And we all know how much we're impacted by sounds. For example, it's such a world of difference taking in the sweet sound of birdsong versus the bombardment of a TV commercial. Sound is medicine, right? Affects our subtle body and our mind and our consciousness. And yet mantra takes that a lot further. Rishis, or great sages throughout the ages, particularly in the Eastern traditions, they were able to track how certain sounds and syllables, when grouped together, would produce specific effects on a subtle body and a nervous system, could open or close our heart, could illuminate and purify our mind, and bring us into much more refined conditions of consciousness. They were able to track how certain sounds and syllables would basically tune the spokes of the wheels of our chakras, which often dominates or directs how we function, right? Whether we work with it in a meditation and how to work with it to expand into various essential qualities. This isn't something you have to believe in order for mantra to work. Your own experience will show you the medicine that you need if you are just open to listening to it and singing it, giving it a go. But there's something about mantras and ancient prayers that have been handed down for many, many, many lifetimes. Some different beings have engaged them, that cultivates a power to it that we would be very wise to engage. In exactly the same way that a river picks up speed and power and momentum when other little tributaries flow into it, it kind of becomes an unstoppable force that's just going to end up in the ocean no matter what. When you turn into a mantra that countless others before you have let go into in their process of surrender and homecoming, really what happens is you are opening yourself to receive all of that grace and spiritual support, all that Shakti, power, the devotion of others who've come before you. And that amplifies your efforts it can exponentiate your sincere prayers. So mantra is really a living stream of grace. It's alive, and it transmits into you the love and the spiritual power of all the beings who've surrendered into that mantra. It's alive with grace to help purify, refine, and expand your consciousness. The purification part of a mantra, one of my students recently said that a particular mantra was the Chidananda mantra that I gave her, was like an immediate and powerful chimney sweep that brings her back to the clarity of her nature. I experienced that myself too. Some mantras are very soothing and healing. On the album, I recorded a Tara mantra because it's a mantra that opens up the deepest compassion there is to help us in those moments of where it just feels impossible. You've lost a loved one. You've just received a shattering medical diagnosis. You're sick or hurting in some way. There's medicine for that. Some mantras refine our consciousness and bring essential qualities into the foreground, like the Gayatri mantra. Like various mantras will do that, will refine us profoundly. There are other mantras that help to expand our consciousness, take us far beyond our current reality, such as the Buddhist Heart Sutra, the Gate Gate mantra, helps us cross over to further shores beyond ego altogether. I mean, ultimately mantra is a way to marinate in a holy name. Just like we marinate a piece of meat or some vegetables, you can marinate in a divine vibration. All spiritual traditions have included some way of taking a simple word or phrase or name of the divine into prayer. For contemplative Christians, this is called centering prayer, as a way to let go into that holiness and to come right back to reality. The Sufis have a saying that whenever we intone a name of God, it's like pouring our consciousness through a fine mesh cloth, removing the impurities. A Course in Miracles, a contemporary spiritual text, says this: say God's name, and you invite the angels to surround the ground on which you stand and sing to you as they spread their wings to keep you safe and shelter you from every worldly thought that would intrude upon your holiness. So when you say a divine name with sincerity, what you're really calling forth is the truth in you, the truth in everything and everyone. It's the ultimate reset. Mantra, though, ultimately, is non-conceptual spiritual practice. It takes us, therefore, beyond what our linear minds can understand, but yet we can experience directly. It's simultaneously highly mystical and yet highly accessible. I mean, what really could be easier than just pressing play? That does not require any faith in anything in particular, my friends. And it does offer you a way, a very direct way, to be found by a grace deeper than all your thoughts and beliefs. A plant does not need to understand the mechanics of photosynthesis in order to lean towards the light that activates it. And so mantra and prayer is really a way of letting go and leaning back into the light. And this is important if we want to really embody peace, come from love, act from unity. We need to keep refreshing and renewing ourselves, coming back to the home that is our true nature, not yours or mine, but ours. Every time you just turn into that intuitive, natural yearning for home, not your home of your childhood, but your spiritual home in the heart. It's as if the love that is there in the depth of your heart magnetically draws you back into the fulfillment of that yearning. And you know this. I'm just reminding you, you know this because your deep heart knows God, because God is really the origin of your own heart. And so this brings us into what prayer is really about. It's coming home, coming back to ourself. It's not really ultimately about the words you say. It's about sincerity. It's about coming nakedly and being real. So while you have likely wandered off into the spiritual wilderness many times in your life, thinking you were abandoned and didn't matter much, that your life wasn't that significant, if you are even a tiny bit willing just to turn more substantially within and let these ancient medicines help you, then the grace of divine love will call you back. The mantra helps you to come back to yourself, welcomes you wherever you are, whether you're in a moment of confusion or celebration or fear or love, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, the mantra welcomes you and invites you deeper into the reality, the one reality that we all share. Just like an individual wave is arising out of the ocean, and that wave is the ocean. It cannot exist any other way. So as you lean into a mantra and let it carry you, you return to the truth, the felt experience that you are within and part of and an extension of the deepest grace there is. This helps us and is relevant even when we're going deeper and further into non-duality on our spiritual path. Even when the felt sense of a someone turning into a something breaks down. When this started happening to me quite a while ago now, when I really entered deeply into no self, non-duality, my experience was one of great silence. And even though I had been a bhakta and singing and chanting and praying for so many years, it was strange to feel as if almost there were no lips to speak or chant words to something that was other than myself. Maybe you've had moments like this too, where you're in a new place spiritually and all the old ways of navigating your spiritual life kind of aren't really applying anymore. But I went with this awkwardness, as we all must. And then one day I was on retreat and I was out running in the woods. And without effort, I began to feel this profound upwelling of quite ecstatic joy for no particular reason. I was running and I started to laugh for no reason. And then out of the laughter came this singing, and it exploded into Sri Ram Jai Ram Jaya Jaya Ram, Sri Ram Jaya Ram Jaya Jaya Ram. And it was so beautiful. And there it was an upwelling of ecstatic devotion and mantra, but from a new place. It wasn't a chanting to something or for something to happen. There was no subject, object, and no agenda. There was just this vast heart with freedom and celebration and immense joy in recirculating itself in a mantra. Ramana Maharshi said that when the self, capital self, friends, is realized, the name of God repeats itself effortlessly and continuously in the heart. Why? Well, we humans are relational beings, aren't we? Even when subject-object might disappear, nevertheless, we love to love. It's a natural expression and one of the most important things that we can do and be in our human lives, surely. So Nisargadatta, another one of the famous non-dual giants of India, who was famous for, his beautiful spiritual classic, I Am That. He himself did traditional puja to deities and mantras 5 times a day. And he said, the mind creates the abyss, but the heart crosses it. So we're talking here about not just the emotional heart, but the spiritual heart, love itself, living us. And so mantra and prayers, ancient prayers, maybe like the Shema or the Lord's Prayer or Om Namah Shivaya or the Metta Bhavana prayer of loving kindness. These ancient prayers have stuck around for very good reasons, and they carry immense spiritual support from so many beings who have felt what you've felt on their human journey and have yearned to really live into their most noble qualities and be of benefit to others as you do. So it's wonderful for us to just turn into these beautiful gifts of grace that have been handed down to us as a way to remember reality, give thanks, let the next level of surrender happen. Recently, a very dear friend of mine and someone who was one of my most devoted students passed from this world. He had a stroke. He was 80 years old. And in those 5 days between having the stroke and going into surgery that he knew he might not survive, he was turning into mantras that I had taught him over the years as a way to spiritually prepare himself. And even though he had lost the motor skills, the capacity to say much, I have these profound little videos taken by his wife of him intoning complex Sanskrit mantras like the Gayatri mantra, praying with his whole being. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, and I will treasure it for the rest of my days. Seeing his devotion, how he turned into that practice to let the full surrender happen with peace, in peace. Such an inspiration to us all that we can turn into these beautiful ancient practices as a way to just open into the next level of the mystery, whatever it's asking of us. So I want to conclude by inviting you into a practice. And it's a practice of a chant that I recorded in my Streams of Grace album. And it's actually, the words are a prayer of a great Sufi master whose name was Hazrat Inayat Khan. He wrote the prayer, "Let my heart reflect thy light, Lord, as the moon reflects the light of the sun in love, always in love." And in the Sufi understanding, whether we are in a male or a female, or we identify as gender neutral, nevertheless, our human soul is really designed to be a she, a receptive vessel for the qualities and attributes of divine being. And so this is really an invitation for you to just feel into that pure place in you where that's what you want to become. You want to become a vessel for the deepest truth and goodness and beauty to pour itself through, that you may be the embodiment of grace that you were designed to be. And the chorus of this beautiful chant is this mystical Arabic mantra, Hu, H-U. Like Om in Sanskrit, it's almost impossible to really conceptually describe, but it's thought of as the breath of God. It's also been defined as heavenly beauty. And so the chorus of this Hu Allah is a way for us to let the surrender happen, that we may emerge into that heavenly beauty and be the most noble, beautiful human beings on this earth we can possibly be. So I invite you to close your eyes and listen and sing, perhaps, if you'd like. Let my heart reflect thy light, Lord, as the moon reflects the light of the sun in love, always in love. Let my heart reflect thy light, Lord, as the moon reflects the light of the sun in love, always It's been such a pleasure to be with you and to share a little taste of this medicine from the Streams of Grace album that you can find on my website, mirandamcpherson.com. And after 30th of September, you will be able to access on all the streaming platforms. I hope you make use of this medicine and let it amplify your deepest prayers for yourself and your loved ones and our world. Thank you.